I want to go through in some detail the shape of the demand curve in oligopoly. The question is often asked to just explain the shape of that demand curve. Never mind long run equilibrium or any of the other concepts. Sometimes it's just the demand curve that's asked, and there can be 20 marks for this question. So, as we may know, there are two demand curves in oligopoly. There's an elastic one and there's an inelastic one. And the boundary between the two is the market equilibrium price here. I'm just going to highlight it as P1. So above P1, the firm faces a very elastic demand curve. And that means that if they put their prices up, even a small amount, to P2, you can see there that they will lose a huge amount of business. Just taking that down from, I'll call that Q1. So it's a very elastic demand curve. Okay, now the reason for that is that the goods in oligopoly are pretty similar. So if one firm puts their prices up, you're just going to buy the produce of another firm or the products of another firm. So it could be insurance, or it could be cars, for example, where if the Toyota Yaris is suddenly now much more expensive, even though you previously thought the Toyota Yaris is the best one, you don't really think that. You know that the Ford Fiesta is practically the same car. It's the same size and the same engine size, and it's got the same features. So if Toyota put their price up, lots less people will buy Toyotas. Underneath market equilibrium, the price of P1, the demand curve is very inelastic. So if they were to drop the price by just the same amount there, we'll just imagine going across to here, the increase in quantity demanded is far less. And again, that speaks to the nature of oligopoly. If Toyota dropped their price from 20,000, let's say, to 16,000, they will gain a certain amount of custom. There's no doubt about that. People will buy Toyotas, but that will not last, because the other car manufacturers will be watching on, and they can easily drop their costs as well, because they've all got similar cost bases. So if Toyota can afford to do it, then Ford and Volkswagen and the others will all do the same thing. Now, it never actually happens. They don't need to actually do it. The threat of that being carried out is enough to prevent anyone breaking ranks and dropping their price below P1. So this gets into the area of collusion and sticky prices. So there collusion? It's hard to prove that there is, but there's certainly that interdependence between the firms where everybody's watching everybody else, and if somebody drops their prices, the rest of us are just going to have to follow them down. And then they know that, so therefore they don't lower their price. So some of this is just purely theoretical, but that's enough, as we know in business. Sometimes the threat of an action is much more effective than the action itself. I want to go on then just to look at the marginal revenue curves there. I've colour coordinated them there. You can see the purple one relates to the elastic demand curve. So that's above market equilibrium. So this elastic demand curve. And then you must always draw, in my opinion, you must always draw a marginal revenue curve to go with an average revenue curve. If it's not needed, that's fine. But if it's part of the marketing scheme, you're going to lose out significantly. So then the inelastic demand curve, then the green marginal revenue curve, is the marginal revenue curve that relates to it. Now, if you just look closely, I've deliberately left that space blank and then filled it in with just a joining line. That is not actually a marginal revenue curve. There is no marginal revenue curve going straight down. So if you've noticed that in the text or in the exam papers, why is it, it's kinked, but there's also a division between the two? This is simply to satisfy the theory. So it's so that you will take that going down like that and that as the marginal revenue curve. But that's technically not what's happening. There are two marginal revenue curves and you simply join them up where the space exists. Now that part of the theory has never been asked, but some people do ask that question in class. So if you're asked about the shape of the demand curve, in my opinion, this is what you need. You don't need any average cost curve or marginal cost curve or any of the other technicalities of the diagrams in Oligopoly. It's just this one in particular.